The late afternoon sun of the Arizona Territory hung like a spent copper coin over Silver Creek, a town that existed only because of a meager, exhausted gold vein. It was 1878, and the harsh wind carried the constant grit of red dust, scratching against the clappered fronts of the saloon and the general store. William H. Bonney, Billy the Kid, rode in, his legendary youth contrasting sharply with the grim seriousness etched on his face. Tomo Folliard, Charlie Boder, and Doc Scurlock followed close behind, their spurs jingling a defiant metallic rhythm against the oppressive silence. Billy pulled his horse, a sturdy bay, to a stop near a dilapidated boarding house. He felt the weight of the town's suspicion, the quiet fear that always preceded a gunfighter's arrival. He wasn't here for gold or for a game of faro. He was here because of a desperate, barely legible note delivered by a wandering prospector, a note concerning Martha, the woman who had sheltered him in his most desperate childhood days, his godmother in all but name. He found her grandson, Josiah, a boy of no more than 12, scrubbing the porch of the boarding house, his movements slow and defeated. The boy's eyes, red-rimmed and guarded, darted up at the sight of the outlaws. Billy dismounted, his boots hitting the packed earth. "You the boy that lives with Martha?" he asked, his voice low, lacking the youthful crackle that often surprised strangers. Josiah dropped his brush and backed against the wall. "Who's asking?" "Name's Billy. I rode a long way, son. Tell me where Martha is." The boy's thin composure shattered. He rushed forward, gripping Billy's leather vest, his small hands trembling. "They took her, mister." "Billy, they took her out to the Badlands. Deputy Harley, he tied her up, tied her right next to a fire ant mound just for asking for a piece of bread at the saloon door." The air thickened, suffocating the dusty street. Tomo Folliard's hand instinctively went to the stock of his Winchester. The brutal specificity of the crime, torturing an elderly, defenseless woman with fire ants for begging, ignited the cold, violent core of the kid's morality. It was an evil that demanded a response beyond simple theft or combat. Billy knelt to meet Josiah's gaze. "Tell me exactly what happened, son. Start from the beginning. Don't leave out a detail." Josiah recounted the horrific truth, his voice a strained whisper punctuated by the wind, whistling through the dry storefronts. Martha, driven by starvation, had sought charity from Deputy Elias Harley, a man known for his bloated cruelty and for wearing a badge that was nothing more than a shield for wickedness. Harley, backed by 2 of Rancher Maxwell's hired guns, had seized Martha. "He said begging was worse than stealing," Josiah choked out, tears finally coming. "He dragged her out past the ridge, said she needed to learn humility from God's smallest creatures. When I finally found her, the sun was setting, and she was nearly dead. Covered in bites, Mr. Billy. The ants, they were still swarming around the ropes he left." Doc Scurlock, the most stoic of the gang, exhaled sharply, the sound like sand rubbing against stone. Charlie Boder spat into the dust, his face a hard mask of fury. This was not the quick, clean violence of a duel. It was the twisted, slow malice of a true villain. Billy stood, his gaze now fixed on the sheriff's office, a small, dark building with barred windows. "Is she safe now, Josiah?" "She's inside. The pain's bad, but the shame's worse. She told me to trust no man with a badge, but I saw your gun, and I heard people whisper in your name. They say you settle scores that God forgets." Billy adjusted the Colt 45 on his hip. "I never forget a face, and I never forget a debt. Martha saved my life once, boy. I owe her more than a piece of bread." He looked at the boy, his expression hardening into a promise. "This Harley fella and his partners, they're going to pay for every single bite. Do you understand? Justice is coming." He looked to the other 3. Tomo Folliard nodded once, fiercely. Doc Scurlock checked the chamber of his Remington. The commitment was made. As the dusk settled, casting long, menacing shadows across Silver Creek, Josiah led Billy to the back of the stable. "There's something else, mister." "Billy," the boy whispered, pointing toward a small water tower on the edge of town. "2 men. They rode out after you rode in. They've been sitting up there since noon, watching the house. Billy squinted through the deepening gloom. Two distinct silhouettes stood against the last faint light of the desert sky, rifles cradled in their arms, their eyes undoubtedly fixed on Martha's hiding place. The villains already knew they were coming. The vengeance would not be a surprise. It would be a planned war. The gang retreated under the cloak of night to a hollow known as the Devil's Kettle, a natural stone depression 6 miles from Silver Creek. The wind, which had been merely annoying, now howled through the rocks, carrying the grit of the desert floor. The 4 men sat in council, the faint scent of sulfur rising from the cracked earth. Doc Scurlock, utilizing a scrap of charcoal and a worn piece of canvas, drew a rough, detailed map of the town and its outskirts. The 2 spotters Josiah saw, we'll call them the Vultures, they report directly to Deputy Harley, but Harley takes his orders from rancher Keegan Maxwell. Maxwell owns half this county and is trying to squeeze out the other half. Maxwell, Billy growled, remembering the name. The Ant-Hill stunt. That wasn't just sadism. That was a message sent using Martha. Maxwell wants every poor settler to sell their claim cheap, and Harley is his attack dog. Tom O'Folliard cleaned his Winchester 73, the metallic snick a cold commentary on the conversation. We take out Maxwell first. The whole rotten operation collapses. Too simple, Tom, Doc countered. Maxwell is holed up at his fortress, the Bar M Ranch, 12 miles out. Heavily fortified high walls, 20 hired guns. If we ride out there, we walk into a slaughterhouse. We take the poison, then the root. Billy looked at Charlie Boda, the gang's eyes and ears. Charlie, you know the territory better than anyone. Get back to town. Use the shadows. Find out where Harley lays his head and where he keeps his gunslingers. I want names, numbers, and habits. Use the old abandoned mine tunnel near the riverbed for cover. Charlie vanished into the cold, wind-whipped darkness, a ghost made of shadow and leather. Doc Scurlock pointed to a route on the map that bypassed the main Silver Creek Road. The Vultures who were watching the boarding house will ride back to Harley soon, thinking they've spotted us. They won't use the main road, they'll use the wash trail. It cuts their ride time by an hour. That wash trail is ours, Billy declared, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. Tom, you and I hit the wash. We don't kill them, we capture them. Harley might be smart, but his underlings will be terrified. They'll tell us where he's waiting for us. The reconnaissance paid off sooner than expected. Before dawn, Charlie returned, covered in dust and sweat, his eyes cold with information. Harley's got 5 men guarding the sheriff's office, expecting an ambush from the front. But the deputy himself is holed up in the back of the Lucky Star saloon, playing poker. He thinks he's safe because he's got a rear exit and a sharpshooter on the roof of the bank across the street. A sharpshooter, Doc murmured. Maxwell's professional touch. Exactly, Billy confirmed. Harley's a pig looking for a comfortable slaughterhouse. We take the Vultures at the wash, squeeze them for details on the bank sharpshooter, and then we hit the saloon just before high noon. We want Harley alive, not dead. He needs to confess. The plan was audacious. Intercept the intelligence, neutralize the counter-sniper, and then take the deputy in a public spectacle that would shatter Maxwell's sense of security. The silence of the desert night was broken only by the creak of leather as the outlaws prepared their gear. Each member checked the action of his preferred weapon, the familiar clack of a lever action, the smooth snick of a revolver's hammer. "Remember the code, boys," Billy said, pulling his bandana up over his lower face. "This ain't about money or glory. This is for Martha, for decency. Let's ride." The gang mounted their horses, the sound of their hooves muffled by the loose desert sand, riding like avenging spirits toward the wash trail and the first confrontation. The rising sun, still hidden behind the jagged mountains, promised a day of cleansing fire. The wash trail was a dried-up ribbon of cracked earth, flanked by thickets of thorny scrub brush, the kind of place where a man could disappear forever. Billy and Tom O'Folliard were positioned behind a large outcrop of sandstone, their horses tethered out of sight. The sun was now climbing, turning the sky into a brilliant hostile blue. The arrival of the vultures, a pair of low-rent gunslingers named Slab and Jiggs, was heralded by the slow thud of their horses' hooves on the dusty ground. They rode carelessly, joking about the frightened townspeople. "Harley said the kid wouldn't show," Slab sneered, adjusting his dirty Stetson. "Too scared of a real gunfight." "Harley's wrong a lot," came Billy's low voice from behind them. Slab and Jiggs spun, their hands flashing toward their pistols, but they were too late. Billy and Tom had the advantage, Colts leveled at their chests. The metallic scent of gunpowder was already thick in the still air. "Drop 'em, gentlemen," Tom commanded, his voice deadly serious, "or you'll be joining those anthills right quick." The cowards dropped their weapons, the thunk of metal hitting the dust, sounding unnaturally loud. They were cruel when backed by a badge, but utterly spineless when confronted with the chilling reality of Billy the Kid. Billy bound their hands with strips of rawhide. "The bank roof," he started, his eyes fixed on Slab. "Tell me about the sharpshooter. Is he Maxwell's man, and what's his sightline?" Jiggs, desperate to survive, stammered out the truth first. "He's the Hawk. Shoots a Winchester Big 50. He's up there to cover Harley in the saloon, but the shot's tricky. He only has a clear line to the back door, and only when the sun glares off the brass rail inside. He's there to protect Harley's escape route," Doc Skurlock concluded, riding up with Charlie. "Smart. They expected us to come through the front door." Billy knelt, his knife tracing a line in the sand next to Slab's terrified face. "Maxwell? Why the anthill? Why not just shoot her?" Slab swallowed hard, his throat dry. "It was the deed. Maxwell's been trying to get hold of Martha's claim. It's got a natural spring on the backside. He wanted to break her spirit, break all the pioneers' spirits, so they'd sign over their water rights for nothing. Harley just wanted to prove he was tougher than the ants." The revelation solidified the motive. Not just petty cruelty, but systematic land theft backed by torture. Billy stood, the cold knot of purpose hardening in his chest. Charlie Bowdra, armed with the precise intelligence, rode out immediately, taking a wide, unseen detour around town. His mission: silence the Hawk. Meanwhile, Billy forced Slab and Jiggs into the scrub brush. "You enjoyed the show, didn't you, boys? Watching a helpless woman suffer? Well, now you get to be the supporting cast." He didn't tie them to an anthill. That was Martha's choice of revenge to make, not his. But he did make them suffer a justice they understood, summary execution. 2 quick shots ended their miserable lives, leaving the scent of gunpowder to mingle with the sage. Billy looked toward the town, the high noon sun now beating down, casting hard, uncompromising shadows. He knew Harley would be waiting, confident in his sharpshooter. Minutes later, from a distant hidden canyon wall, they heard the faint, dull thud of a powerful rifle. Charlie Bowder had done his work. The Hawk was silent. "Harley just lost his angel," Billy said, mounting up. "Doc, Tom, we ride into Silver Creek. High noon, straight to the Lucky Star. We take Harley, and he's going to tell us exactly where Maxwell is keeping his books and his remaining guns." The 3 riders moved toward the town, the rising tension in the air as palpable as the desert heat. The stage was set for the showdown. High noon in Silver Creek was a furnace of noise and light. The rhythmic plink-plink-plink of an out-of-tune piano drifted from the saloon, mixing with the sharp scent of stale whiskey and dust. Billy, Doc Skurlock, and Tom O'Folliard rode to the center of the main street, their figures stark against the blinding sun. Deputy Harley, sweating and arrogant, stood framed in the double doors of the Lucky Star saloon. Behind him, 4 of his men, all heavily armed, were nervously positioned behind barrels and crates. Harley had received a frantic warning from the sheriff's office. The vultures were missing, and the Hawk hadn't reported in. "Bonnie!" Harley roared, his voice cracking with fear, masked by false bravado. "You're making a grave mistake, boy. This is the law you're facing. Maxwell's got half the territory covered. You ride out now, and I might just let you live." "The only mistake here, Deputy, was tying my godmother to an anthill for begging," Billy retorted, his voice calm, chillingly conversational. That wasn't law. That was just pig-headed cruelty. Step outside and face your reckoning. The exchange was the signal. Doc Scurlock and Tom O'Folliard immediately split, Doc taking cover behind a heavy water trough, his Winchester trained on the saloon's front windows, while Tom flanked right, moving toward the stables to cut off any potential escape route. Harley and his men opened fire, the explosion of gunpowder loud and frantic. Doc and Tom returned fire with grim, measured precision, forcing the deputies to duck for cover. Billy, moving faster than sight, ran across the street, drawing both his Colt .45s. He vaulted over a hitching post, closing the distance while maintaining his deadly, fluid pattern of fire. The air was filled with the acrid smell of burnt black powder and the terrifying sound of splintering wood. Two of Harley's men fell quickly, their bodies collapsing amidst shattered whiskey bottles. Ollie, realizing the battle was lost, ducked out the rear door, but he ran straight into the waiting ambush. Charlie Boder, having rejoined the fight, blocked the alley. "Going somewhere, deputy?" Charlie drawled. A Colt Derringer pointed at Harley's wide eyes. The confrontation with Harley's men inside the saloon was swift. Tom and Doc neutralized the remaining two gunfighters with surgical efficiency. They had won the immediate battle, but the war was still on. They dragged the pathetic Deputy Harley, bruised and terrified, into the middle of the street, throwing him down beside his discarded badge. "The Bar M Ranch," Billy demanded, pressing the barrel of his Colt against Harley's sweating forehead. "Where does Maxwell keep the signed water deeds? Who is the judge that signed the warrants?" Harley, broken by the speed and brutality of the attack, spat dust and confessed everything. Judge Barrow in Santa Fe was signing the fraudulent deeds. The real evidence, the original water rights documents of the settlers, were kept in a fireproof safe at Maxwell's office in the ranch's main house. "He's got 20 men waiting, Bonnie. He expected you to come here and die. He'll be expecting you at the ranch now." "It's suicide," Harley cried hysterically. "Suicide is what you earned," Billy stated, his gaze hard. "You're going back to the Badlands, deputy. You're going to sit exactly where you put my godmother." Billy left Harley bound and gagged on the outskirts of town, but not at the anthill. That final indignity was reserved only for the man who pulled the strings. The true target was Maxwell. The four outlaws, Billy, Tom, Doc, and Charlie, rode hard out of Silver Creek, heading directly for the Bar M Ranch, the powerful fortress of Rancher Maxwell. They arrived under the deep, purple light of the approaching dusk. Doc and Charlie took the North Ridge for cover, while Billy and Tom, utilizing a dry creek bed, breached the lower wall, setting a small, contained fire in the main stables to create a diversion. The fight at the Bar M was fierce. Maxwell's men were professionals, better armed and more numerous, but the gang had surprise and rage on their side. Billy fought with a cold, almost balletic speed, his two Colts weaving a web of death. The air was a symphony of shouting, gunfire, and the screams of stampeding horses. They fought their way into the main ranch house, finding Keegan Maxwell barricaded in his oak-paneled office. Maxwell, a heavy, imposing man with the look of wealth and absolute power, faced Billy with a powerful custom-made shotgun. "You're finished, kid. You took my men, but you won't take my empire," Maxwell roared, firing a blast that tore apart the doorframe. Billy returned fire with a quick low shot, hitting the rancher in the arm and forcing him to drop the shotgun. Maxwell fumbled to open the safe behind his desk. "You won't get them. I'll burn the deeds first." "You destroy that, and you destroy the last piece of justice this desert knows." Billy's voice was strained, echoing the exhaustion of the fight. He didn't wait. A final decisive shot from Billy ended the reign of Keegan Maxwell. The rich, suffocating silence returned, broken only by the distant crackle of fire in the stables. Doc Scurlock surveyed the damage, his medical training giving way to tactical assessment. Two of Maxwell's toughest gunmen were down, but a third, wounded, had crawled away toward the horse pens. "We've neutralized the core, Billy, but the scent of blood travels fast. We found a manifest here, tucked into the safe alongside the deeds. It shows regular payments to Judge Barrow in Santa Fe, disguised as legal fees. This wasn't just a rancher's whim. This was a well-oiled machine of corruption. Tom quickly secured the large leather roll containing the legitimate deeds, replacing them with the fraudulent documents they had recovered from Harley's office. A final, ironic flourish of frontier justice. Charlie Bowder whistled sharply from the perimeter, a coded warning that stray riders were approaching, drawn by the smell of smoke and gunpowder. The Bar M Ranch was burning, a beacon of defiance and death, and they needed to vanish before the remaining posse members converged. Billy took a moment to look down at Maxwell's corpse, the face of the Baron frozen in a mask of impotent fury. The sight gave him no pleasure, only the cold satisfaction of a debt repaid. This was bigger than Martha. It was a war against every corrupt official and greedy land thief in the territory, a war he had just declared with 2 smoking colts. He mounted his horse, the scent of burning wood and gunpowder clinging to his clothes. "Let's ride, boys. We have a promise to keep and a whole territory to outrun." As the moon rose, casting a silver sheen on the bloody carnage, Billy and his gang rode back into the now silent town of Silver Creek. Billy walked straight to the boarding house, the heavy roll of deeds tucked under his arm. He found Martha, still bandaged but defiant, sitting on the porch, Josiah asleep beside her. Billy knelt, placing the deeds gently in her lap. "Ma'am," he said, his voice husky with relief, "the ant hill is empty. The man who paid for the pain won't walk the earth again. And this is your land, clear and true." Martha, her eyes shining with unshed tears, simply touched the heavy stack of papers. "You brought me justice, Billy. Not revenge, but justice." The news spread through the territory like a wildfire driven by a desert gale. Keegan Maxwell, the cattle baron, was dead, his ranch a smoking ruin, and Deputy Harley was found, bound but alive, in the Badlands. The justice was rough, immediate, and undeniable, but the scale of the violence, the death of a powerful man, and the humiliation of a lawman sent the entirety of the established order into a vengeful panic. The cavalry arrived first, followed by a swarm of bounty hunters and local sheriffs desperate for the bounty on Bonnie's head. The name William H. Bonney was now etched in ink on the top of every wanted poster from Santa Fe to Tucson. The gang retreated deep into the desolate Gila wilderness, where the only sounds were the rasping wind and the cry of high-flying hawks. They camped near a hidden mesa, the air thin and cold under a sky crowded with stars. Doc Scurlock surveyed the vast, difficult terrain. "They'll send Pat Garrett, kid. Maxwell had the political juice. This is no longer just a local vendetta. This is the government." "We knew that when we rode out," Billy replied, cleaning his pistol. He looked at his companions, Tom, Charlie, Doc, and Jose, a unit forged in shared danger. "We ride together, we die together, but we won't die here. Not yet." Billy looked at his men, his eyes holding the final, unavoidable truth. This is where the trail splits. 4 riders leave a clear path. 1 or 2 can vanish. He outlined the plan with the precision of a field commander. "Doc, Jose, you 2 ride south. Split up immediately. Head for the border. You have the knowledge and the resilience. Go live your lives." The farewells were swift, grim handshakes, the silent acknowledgement of men who understood the odds. Billy turned to Tomo Folliard and Charlie Bowdra, the men he loved like brothers. Tom, as always, argued to stay. "I'm your shadow, Billy. I go where you go." "Not this time, Tom. I need you to be my memory. You and Charlie ride north. Use the old mountain trails. Find refuge. Get new names. You 2 carry the true story of Silver Creek. You tell them why Maxwell died. Justice was done. He needed them to survive, to ensure the legend was born correctly, not as a bandit, but as a righteous avenger." Billy watched his companions ride out, each man a dwindling figure swallowed by the immense, dark landscape. He mounted his own horse, turning it not toward any hidden path, but directly back toward the flat, easily tracked desert floor, the path of the inevitable chase. He rode alone for 2 days, moving with a supernatural cunning that defied his youth. He drew Pat Garrett and his tireless posse deep into the heat-shimmering wilderness, scattering false trails, appearing briefly at distant ridges, and then disappearing without a trace. Garrett and his men found the evidence of his passing: a discarded tin cup, a spent cartridge, the print of a single small boot heel. But they never found the man. They never caught William H. Bonney. The settlers, the homesteaders, and the impoverished Mexican families whose deeds had been restored told the story. They told of the bandit who killed a powerful man for the simple, unsung virtue of protecting an old woman who couldn't protect herself. William H. Bonney had vanished. What remained in the territory was Billy the Kid, not a man of flesh and blood, but a spectral presence, an unseen avenger glimpsed in the shimmering heat haze, the swift, untamed shadow that rode the dusty canyons of the Southwest, forever pursued, yet never captured. He was the perpetual movement at the edge of sight, the silent embodiment of justice in a land without law, cemented forever as the ultimate legend of the Wild West.